Okay, I thought I'd unmould this on camera. Well, while talking to you, should I say. I'm going to unmould it on camera, but as I have no idea what's going to be in here, and we might as well find it together. And if it's a huge flop, then we'll have to try and find out ways we can figure it out. I'm always real with you guys. I always tell you what problems I have. I don't pretend to be any masterclass at this. Because I figure, you know, if I'm having problems, you might have problems. So, yeah, I try and be real. I'm not perfect. I'm just a real person that likes doing resin. And it goes wrong sometimes. So I'm trying to get off the tape. I did put quite a bit of tape around the outside. I put some of the bezel, open back bezel tape on, and then I put some normal regular sellotape on the outside. And I'm doing it the wrong way. Is that what it is? I tell you what, I'll just snip through it. Yay. Okay. So I'm nervous. I had a really bad experience with this resin. Right, okay. Shall I just take the lid off first? I am scared. Okay, so we had some leakage at and we've got loads of bubbles. Loads of bubbles. I always get loads of bubbles with this resin. Always. Always. It says little bubbles. Oh, there's little bubbles. Loads of little bubbles. But okay, we can see. And you know what? It's still really soft. It has been sat here 30 hours and it's really soft still. I don't know if I want to open the rest. Is it going to stretch? Okay. Is it going to even come away? This is the problem I had last time. It took... No, it isn't cured. So I'm going to leave it. We'll come back to it because that isn't cured. This is the excess and it's sticky. It isn't cured. On the bottle it says 24 hours. Wait 24 hours after curing. This is the one I had last time. So, okay, we'll have to wait then, because this, I'll leave this lid off and hopefully give it more air space. But that's, all those bubbles there are a disaster. Right, okay, well that's not good. Okay, so we'll come back and we'll see how we get on when it's cured some more. So I've left the thinners a couple of hours, and as it's dried I've noticed it's dipped a little and we've still got a million bubbles, but it is slightly firmer. I'm hoping we can do something with this with UV and see if we can neaten it up a bit. Now let's see, it's still pliable though. I'm loose it on all sides. Now I did put UV to stick it together, so I'm hoping that meant we didn't get loads of leakage, which we didn't. We have the UV, I think we got a little bit, I don't know, I did put a load of UV, so can't tell how much leak. We did get a little bit. There's a fly in here, it's driving me mad. I think we got a tiny bit, but not much. I think the UV resin really helped to keep it in there. Now, there's hundreds of little bubbles. Hundreds. I poured it all and I don't think it wants to come off the mould. It is still squishy. And this has been 30 plus hours. Let's see if we can do it by just releasing the mould and not touching the cube at all, the dice. And let's see if we can. Oh, okay. So the glitter sunk to the bottom, although it hides some of the, and the pearl, is it pearly? No, I mixed the pearl, but it's definitely more pearlescent on the bottom than it is on the top. Now with a really, really, really slow setting resin, you do get a lot more settlement than you do with a fast cure resin. So your glitters, see how that looks, see how that's distorted the corner. So I'm going to leave this, but you can use scissors and we can clean up while the resin is still soft quite easily, but I'm going to leave this to be a little bit more cured before we do much else with it. I like, if I had not have, see that's totally, the bubbles in this are just crazy. When you saw me spin the mould, what I was doing was coating, because sometimes with these ball moulds, well this is a dice mould, but you know when you get those ball moulds and you get totally encased 3D moulds, that's probably the better word, 3D moulds. You get the moulds and what can happen is, if the inside isn't wet because it's not coated in resin, you get like little air pockets, and you'll get voids, you get air pockets, and you'll sort of get the corners that will end up being sort of a pocket of air, and you'll end a big bubble. So by rotating the mould, when I put a small amount of resin in, by rotating the mould, you coat all of the mould in a very small amount of resin, and that helps so you don't have it's all wet inside, and you hopefully when you come to pour the rest of the resin in, the wet meets the wet and you don't get that dry pocket of air in the corner. And that worked well. We didn't get any of that, but at the top, and you saw I poured right to the very, very top, we get, and I always get a little bit of shrinkage with this resin, and then we've got a million bubbles. I poured really slowly. So, troubleshooting, what could we do to stop that? We could leave the lid off, and what we could do is have, now it says 60 grams of resin, and this is a really slow curing resin. So if I was to make another one of these, my tips would be, pour the resin, oh this fly is so irritating, pour the resin, leave the lid off, let the bubbles come to the surface, let all of the resin settle, bubbles come to the surface, leave some of the resin in a pot, because it isn't going to harden. This stuff takes, I mean you can see it's still squidgy, we're 30 odd hours in and it's still squidgy. So leave some in a pot, and I'm going to try and say if I leave it an hour possibly, then coat the top in resin, then put the lid on, and see if we can eliminate those bubbles, because it is so slow curing, these bubbles. I mean, not only this, but there are hundreds of bubbles in this resin, hundreds. You saw me pour really slow. I even poured down a stick. To start with, I poured really, really, really slowly. And I know it's not well, I did everything that I could think of. Poured really slowly, stirred really slowly. I let the resin sit before pouring it to make sure all the bubbles were out of the resin. I let the resin sit for 15 minutes before I poured it to try and, but this resin, it gives me huge amounts of issues, huge bubbles. Now my other long setting resin that I use, and it's not quite, it doesn't take 36 hours or something to cure like this one, but it gives me a good 24 hours before it's cured. Doesn't give me any bubbles. So I'm gonna see what I can do, come up with a little action plan, see if we can fill some of these bubbles. Now my first immediate thought is, let's see if we can use the UV resin, see if we can fill in some of these bubbles, see if we can rotate a little bit, fill some in, and see if we can get it looking a little bit better, a little bit sharper. And I could even put it back, put the top half of the mould back on, whichever way, and see if I can get a nice sharp edge, see if that looks any better, and then we'll do some numbers. But for this I'm going to wait for it to cure a little bit longer, trim her up a little bit, and then use some scissors and some nippers, see if we can get these little pieces off here. Other than that, I mean, there are hundreds of bubbles, but the pearl colour is lovely, and the glitter that I put in is beautiful on the bottom. I knew it would settle, but the pearl colour is much nicer here. Can you see it so much on the top? Has the pearlescent sank? You can, but because there's so many bubbles in it, it's kind of spoilt it. But you can see it much better at the bottom, the pearl. So I don't know whether the pearl, because if you look at the bottom of the bottle, see how the pearls sank? And I think it's sinking in the resin as well. It takes that long to cure that whatever you put in this resin just sinks. So I'm glad that I used the UV method of putting the confetti around first before I poured it, because if I'd have put the confetti in there, we'd have had a pool at the bottom. Absolutely. So this is where, if you want inclusions, glitters, things like that, use a faster setting resin, not a long setting resin. But I mean, the longest setting resins give you working time, but they don't give you design aspects like this for these 3D molds. Right, let's see if we can fix this little cutie, kinda. See you in a bit. Okay, so as you can see, the UV did pretty good. We've still got quite a few bubbles into there, but it looks a lot better than it did. So we have managed to kind of save it. I love it. I'm very unhappy with all the bubbles underneath it, but that's the best we're going to get from that resin, I'm afraid. So I found, since the I did the little ones, and I did pretty good. Painting these are so shallow, the numbers, sorry that's my phone, the numbers are so shallow that doing it with the acrylic paint, it just kept wiping out. I was getting so frustrated, so I found doing these with the little tiny marker good. I wanted to do these letters in pink. I don't have one of the Sharpies in that colour in the small nib. So I found an old marker. I don't even know if you can get these anymore. This is years old. It's not permanent, so I might have to I might have to paint over with UV resin at the top if I want to keep it permanent, if I can't find, or I may get a small Sharpie and go over afterwards. But this is a really nice colour, it's metallic and it kind of matches the confetti. So I'm going to see what this looks like after, and I can always go over the top of the, so let's see if I can get this. It is, the tip's quite good, but the nib is quite thick towards the back, so I'm going to see if I can get this into the next. I've got to see the reflection to be able to get the number, and because it's water based I can wipe it off as many times as I like, but we'll see how this goes and then we'll come back when it's finished. Hello. Okay, so we're finished. I think it turned out okay. The pink pen wasn't perfect because we've got so many tiny little bubbles, you see, so it didn't cover the surface perfectly, and that would have been the same. Perhaps paint would have gone on a little thicker, but because the numbers are so shallow, I had a little bit of, every time I wiped it off, the paint came with it. But there are other pens and things that would probably be more perfect, but I wanted them to be pink and I didn't have the perfect pink, but that's okay. So when I get the perfect pink, I'll go over the top. And the little ones, they're really cute. So many more possibilities of colours and styles and things you can do. Definitely the using the idea with the resin, with the confetti, was great. Never would have got the coverage with a slower setting resin. So I do like it. Was it worth the wait from November? Bearing in mind I'm a couple of months behind, so we did have to wait a few months, but not as long as now. Other people had their boxes. Yeah, we had the boxes a couple of months ago. I think the mould is nice. It does have its flaws. If I hadn't, doing the UV resin here definitely helped with leakage, definitely. I think that's, if you're going to use this mould, or another sort of 2-3 part mould like this, then put in a coat of UV resin, gluing it together, and definitely that's the way to go. The little mould was cute, and if you're going to use the little mould with a syringe, pushing the syringe in, you have to be careful. If you push the syringe all the way in, fill it up and then pull the syringe out, you're going to have an air pocket. So you definitely need to push your syringe in, then as you're filling, pull the syringe back out, and you can feel when it comes out, and push so that you know the syringe is up here, and push the last piece in and you will fill the cavities. And all of them filled, and I didn't have any problems with air pockets. These are the first ones I did. I didn't need to redo them. They were the first ones I did, and I didn't have any problems with air pockets. So yeah, it does work. It worked first time for me. If you are aware that you need to be and as you're pulling out, still pushing the resin in, otherwise you're going to get an air pocket. The problem with this kit is the resin. This 3:1 resin, it leaves 50 ton of bubbles. It is the bubbliest resin I have ever tried. Now you can see where we fixed it. I mean, that's amazing compared to, you saw the mess. So what I did was I used a cocktail stick, I poked a lot of the bubbles in, and so instead of being individual bubbles, they were one conjoined bubble. and then I forced in as much UV resin as I could. There are still bubbles in there. If you see, there are still bubbles in there, but it looks so much better than it did. So definitely going to try this mould again. I'm going to do the same technique with gluing it together, but I'm going to use a different resin. And you know, I've got those the powders, the chameleon powders, and so I'm going to have a go at doing chameleon powders with the Let's resin, and I'm going to see if we can get a bubble-free dice, because this, I've tried so many different resins and this is the only one where I get masses of bubbles. Anyway, I hope you liked this project. It was cute, it was sweet. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Thanks for watching. It's nice to be back and to see you all, and we will, leave me some comments and we'll have a little chat. Take care and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.